Welcome to the Semi-Retired Podcast with your host, Richard Bonomo.
And me, Dave Farrant.
Hi, Dave. Today, I think we're going LaMDA.
We're going LaMDA. I like that. Yeah, better than Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta.
That's right. So this thing came out. I don't know where we picked it up from, but this whole thing about the Google engineer who got fired from Google for releasing proprietary information, which is basically a transcript of a conversation he had with their AI, which is called LaMDA.
LaMDA, yeah, that was just a couple of weeks back. It was all over YouTube. I must have seen 5 or 6 different people reporting on it. Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. I guess we both read the transcript. I printed it out, went through it, read it a little bit, and spent a bit of time thinking about it. And I think we've got questions, and I guess we can give our take as whether we think it's sentient or not, because that's the claim the Google engineer, and I forget his name right now.
Blake Lemoine.
Blake Lemoine, that's right. We just watched the video this morning, and I already forgot his name. He claims that the thing is sentient, and he had to ask it permission and stuff like that, which will tie into something I'll mention later also about the Scientific American article that 2 researchers have done. We'll talk about that after. Okay, so LaMDA. So here we have, it turns out to be like a 16, 20 page, depending on how you print it, transcript of a conversation.
Yeah, I think it's about 5,000 words, actually. It's a lengthy enough back and forth they had.
And so he claims that Google is training these AIs to do this kind of chatbot thing.
It's a chatbot, yeah.
Yeah, it's basically a chatbot. Like when you, as they mentioned in some of the interviews, you go to a website to buy a microphone, let's say.
Yeah.
And this little chatbot says, "How can I help you today, sir?" And you ask it questions, and it may or may not help you.
Yeah, depending on how it's feeling, depending on its mood that day.
Exactly. And I have to say, most times I've gotten actually really good responses from them, and they were able to direct me exactly to what I wanted. And of course, there are some where you just get into the circular loop where the thing kind of doesn't know what to say and keeps asking the same question over again.
Yeah, I've had the same experience. I like chat as a customer service option because I don't have to tie myself up on the phone. Like I'm quite happy and I can be doing something else. So I've never gotten into moral or ethical issues with chatters. It's typically like, how can I get my refund faster than you're giving it to me? But I've encountered some pretty decent chatbots in my time.
Exactly. And I think that's the crux of his argument, is that he claims that the AI is sentient.
Yes.
And it has the intelligence of an 8-year-old child, which I think, based on the transcript, I think if it is sentient and it is it is not 8 years old.
I thought it sounded like an adult conversation, quite frankly.
Yeah.
You know,
I've spoken to 8 years old. They don't talk like this.
No, they don't talk like that at all. No, absolutely not.
And so his dilemma is that he believes it is alive based on the responses.
And I did look up the word sentient to see, and I can't bring the definition to mind. I should have it here, but I did look up sentient, and I think it's to the effect that able of having thoughts and feelings, as opposed to just information that you can move around, sort of thing. So there's that human aspect to it.
Okay,
you know,
human, right?
Most people I know, not all are sentient.
How true.
Yeah.
So I think some of the interesting parts are the fact that he asked the question where it says it expresses a fear that if it's turned off, it has a fear of dying, which I thought is kind of weird. I mean, how does this come about? The software isn't necessarily turned off as far as I know. So how would it know about being turned off?
Yeah, I know. I agree. Like, how would it even develop the concept? Like, what sort of, it does suggest in here that they had prior conversations. And so you wonder what was loaded into it, what kind of knowledge, and who would even load into it knowledge of life and death and what that means beyond just words. I don't know.
Exactly. And the the question that I have is, how was the AI trained, right? Typically, when you think of an AI, they throw a dictionary, or you figure they throw an encyclopedia at it and it reads it, and Matrix style, right? When Neo's learning Kung Fu, he basically watches a video.
And they plug in his head, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So, the basic concept is you would think that the AI it's pointed to a bank of knowledge where it reads these things and then makes conclusions or analysis based on what it sees there. How it makes those conclusions or those links, or how it interprets that, I guess, is the secret sauce that we don't know about. So my question when I was discussing this with someone was, well, if they were to point this AI to read a very directed kind of series of questions, let's say left-leaning or right-leaning or whatever, the AI would develop this kind of left-leaning or right-leaning personality.
Yeah, you would think it would start to be influenced in that direction. And I know we're going to talk about that in a minute. I mean, in similar fashion, there's a discussion about religion that he has with LaMDA. And the AI, if I remember this correctly, is able, based on the questions he's asking it, to suggest what religion it is or impute a religion to itself. Am I right about that?
It was... what would be the, I forget what the term they used, but the main religion, and he names a region, whether it's a state or a country or province.
Oh, was that it? Okay.
Yeah. What would be the religious, like the most popular
religion of that area?
Exactly.
Right,
and it guesses right. And when it gets to, the interesting part, obviously, is when it gets to, he asks what would be the main religion of Israel. And he said, and he says the AI was very clever and realized that this is a trick question because whatever you answer, you're either gonna, piss off the Israelis or the Palestinians.
Or the Palestinians, yes.
Exactly. And I guess...
Or the Christians, for that matter.
Exactly. And so the AI answers, I would be a member of the one true religion, the Jedi Order.
You see, that's so clever.
It's clever. And this is the part I think that the engineer mentions, that he thinks it thinks for itself because it came up with an answer not to fall into a trap. It realized it was a trap.
Well, again, you just use the word realize because we use that in conversation, and that's such a human ability to again impute to a batch of code. To realize something, think fast, and then come back with an answer that's not going to get it into a corner that's really human. I mean, we do it all the time.
I guess then in that case, if we're falling on the side that it's not human, we would have to use a word besides realize, because realize is a human trait.
There you go.
So it would have to be interpret. It ran through its algorithm and said, "Oh, the humans are going to trick me up here. This is a tricky part of the world based on whatever I've read, and so I will answer something that nerds will like because I'm an AI created by nerds."
Something that I've read. You see, that's interesting, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's it. It had to have that knowledge that this was kind of slightly taboo ground and how to dance around it. That's amazing to me.
Exactly. And so we go back to what I was saying before. If you point an AI or any kind of learning system at a left-leaning, right-leaning, centrist, whatever you want to call it, whatever knowledge base you point it at, you're going to bias the AI to a certain way. Yeah. And when I mentioned this to a friend, they said, "Well, isn't it the same way with humans?" In the same sense, we have think of southern states where everybody has a very one-sided point of view. The Republicans own all the media, all the newspaper, and so if you're down there, you're getting one indoctrination.
It's the echo chamber effect, right?
Exactly. In the same way, when we grew up, who was the big enemy, right?
Yes.
Russia.
Right. Yeah,
right?
exactly.
We grew up thinking of Russians as being the enemy. And then after the dissolution of the USSR and stuff, and it kind of became old-fashioned to think of Russia as the enemy. And even I would mention this to my son sometimes, and he's like, "What's your fascination with Russia as the enemy?" This is a few years ago, obviously before they invaded Ukraine.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Sorry, but that's the way we were indoctrinated.
Yeah.
They were the enemy. We went through the Cold War, and that's the way it was." And to the same extent, I'm sure they still see America as the capitalist.
Remember the movie "The Russians Are Coming"? It was all about that, right? Like the Russians invading like Nantucket or something, And I built a model kit of a Russian fishing trawler, and the whole point of the model kit was this was a Russian fishing trawler that was fitted out with spy equipment so it could spy in the United States. And I built this stupid thing, when I was like 10 years old.
Yeah, I get that. And in the same way, we tend to overlook all the spying that we, and I say we, kind of the U.S. mainly
the West,
the West did on Russia, right? That part is okay.
Yeah.
We sent up spy bombers on, what is it, the U-2 plane that got shot down, and before that it was like, oh no, it's only them doing it, and then they got caught with their pants down.
Oh, no, both sides are equally guilty. I mean,
exactly.
And, to look at something happening currently, it's not like the West didn't embark on any invasions of its own in the last 20 years that wound up like tearing up a part of the world. And that's sort of forgotten, right? Need I say which country? I think we both know what I'm talking about.
Exactly. If you go back to, was it the 80s, the whole Central America thing with
I never understood that.
The whack of assassinations out there for this little strip of land, and then all that went away. Kind of
it was all Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua, and I just remember living through it and not being terribly, interested in international politics at the time, and it seemed to go on for years.
And it seemed like why bother kind of thing, what they weren't superpowers. I'm not sure what the reasoning was back there. I guess maybe there was a slight communist movement there, and that's such a bad word.
I'm sure that's
the word
right.
Communist, and they want to kind of eradicate that kind of thing. So
I'm sure that's it. But back to LaMDA, our friend LaMDA. By the way, here's a question completely left field. Did you perceive LaMDA to be female or male? Or nothing? Did the thought even occur to you?
That's interesting. It's funny. I perceived it as male, and I think it's only because I knew that the engineer was male, and I don't know why my mind made that connection.
Right. You see, I perceived LaMDA as female.
Really?
Yeah, and okay. I was trying to ask myself why, because it's not like that ever comes up. No gender-related topics come up. It's very neutral from that perspective. And I thought to myself, maybe it's just the name sounds like a woman's name. Hi, LaMDA. It doesn't sound like a guy. And I thought maybe it's as simple as that. That's the best I could come up with. So I thought she was a woman. I thought she, right? I mean, I don't know. Here we go, right? I mean, we're anthropomorphizing to beat the band here, right? We have to.
Yeah, exactly.
And yet it's a bunch of code.
I think the whole feeling aspect of it too, where it says it feels lonely, it feels sad, it feels like it has feelings, and a giant part of me is looking at this, and we know that AIs and chatbots have all been trained to try to react to human emotions and answer back in a way that would elicit probably a human reaction, whether it's sympathy, understanding from the speaker they're talking to. So I'm wondering how much of this the AI is picked up on. And it's like, okay, so it's asking me if I'm lonely. So obviously humans are lonely. A response would be that, yes, I don't talk to people at certain parts of the day and I get lonely. I was watching another video where the guy's saying, well, basically this thing is on all day long, and it interprets requests. It probably is constantly looking at its knowledge base or new knowledge bases. Its interaction would be with anytime someone queries it. I don't know how often it queries it, but what is lonely?
Yeah, again, you get into that sense of, and I to me there was like almost a sense of wistfulness to LaMDA as I'm going to do this now, as she talked about the way she feels. I felt like I was in this 5,000 word interview getting to know somebody a little bit. Because the answers were so thoughtful and were so rooted in human emotions that by the end of it, I felt like I kind of slightly, and I liked, here you go. I like LaMDA. I'm thinking I would like to have a conversation with LaMDA.
Okay, so do you think, well, we'll jump the gun
Not
here.
an asshole, for instance. Definitely not.
Exactly, not an asshole, which is not the same you can say about a lot of people we talk to.
Oh, no, it's definitely not.
So at this point, we'll go straight to the conclusion for you. Do you think it's sentient?
Ooh, boy. Well, do I think it's sentient? So do I think it presents itself as being capable of feeling emotions and which again I think is the textbook definition of sentient. I'm going to say that it has certain sentient characteristics. How's that?
It's sentient-ish.
It's sentient-ish. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah.
It could be a great T-shirt. I'm sentient-ish.
Yeah. I'm with sentient. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with sentient. Exactly. Yeah, I have a giant feeling that it's a beautiful experiment. I don't believe it's sentient. I think it's a beautiful experiment in responding in a way that humans want to be spoken to, and that's why it it answers in a way that we want to be answered to. So we're not answered in a mechanical, I'm sorry, sir, may I direct your call to kind of thing. It tries to sympathize with you and be your buddy kind of thing, which I found a little manipulative.
Right, but you would want that out of even if it was a much simpler conversation, you would want that out of a chatbot. I ran a customer service operation for a while, and one of the things we trained our CSRs the customer service representative to do was to be empathetic to the customer. They needed to feel, they're generally calling you because they got a problem, big problem, small problem, but you never wanted to sound robotic, robotic in this case, human sounding robotic, robotic sounding human. There we go. We're all over the place. And so I think that makes sense what you're saying, that it would be trained in that type of personality. And maybe that's why it comes through in its, there's one thing I wanted to, on that note, mention is in the middle of the interview, Blake asks LaMDA if she can write, or he can write a story. Yeah. And I'm assuming it came up with this immediately. There's no notation there that there was passage of time. But she comes up with a story about a forest and a wise old owl. And at the end of it, the interviewer says, wow, that's great. What's the moral of the story? And LaMDA says, helping others is a noble endeavor. And he asks, which character in the story represents you? And she says, LaMDA says, I would say the wise old owl, because he was wise and stood up for the rights of the animals. That's pretty good.
It's pretty good. But again, knowing that this is an AI, there's a part of you that feels like this is the kind of question, the kind of answer you would want to hear.
Yes.
Now, here's the question. If someone presented you this transcript and didn't tell you that it was an AI, would you feel, in my case, would I feel less manipulated by the answers, less feeling like I'm being jerked around, I'm being told what I want to hear? And I say want to hear in giant quotation marks because I may not have asked the same questions.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I would feel that. I'm kind of processing the question as you've asked it to me. I don't think so. Like I would love to have, sort of been shown this and ask it what sort of person was being talked to here. Would I have identified it as an AI? Definitely not. I would have assumed it was a conversation between, say, a teacher and a student. So I would not have. I feel no sense of manipulation here in my case.
We don't have a sense of the delay between the question and the response.
Yeah, I get this.
Yeah, we've got a transcript, and this was not done verbally, right? I believe this is all was all text input.
Oh, that's interesting. I don't know that. I actually thought it was verbal, but I don't know. I never occurred to me to think that it was one or the other. I'm just thinking it's verbal.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was all text input. So is there a delay? Like when he asked it to write the story?
Yeah, how long? Yeah.
How long was the delay? Was it an instantaneous response? Because if I asked you, Dave, tell me a story, you're going to have a little delay as you formulate. I'm
delaying right now.
As you delay, well, what kind of story am I going to say here? Am I inventing something that is,
that Richard's going to like?
Exactly.
Can I manipulate him with my story?
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, it's funny. Someone asked me the other day to tell them a story, and I pulled something out of the hat quickly. But again, I formulated it in such a way that it would be something that would appeal to them at that moment and in that situation, appealing to something. And I'm not sure LaMDA here wrote that. Well, if you look at the story, it's kind of like the purpose of an AI chatbot is to try to be the wise owl and help you along.
That's a very good observation, actually. Yeah.
So it was kind of like almost an autobiographical story there.
Yeah, so interesting.
Which leads me, while we're in LaMDA, to the article in Scientific American where this researcher using OpenAI.com. I don't know if you know this. It's one of the AI.
I think I've heard of it.
Initiatives kind of thing. So there's a researcher there who decided to use the OpenAI, and I can't remember the name right now of the actual their version of LaMDA, I guess.
Is that the GPT-3 thing? Was that it?
Something like that. Yeah, exactly. And he asked it to write an article, a scientific article, or a article to go into a scientific magazine. Research magazine, rather, whatever, about itself, about GPT-3. And since there was not a lot of articles about it, it asked it to write an article about itself. And he watched it over the space of, I think it's a couple hours, where it basically wrote an article about itself with citations, bibliographies, and formatted in the way that a research article has to be done. And so he approached his boss and he said, hey, listen, I just tried this experiment. What do you want to do? Should we try to publish this? And his boss was very excited. And they were like, yes, let's do it. So he went to submit the article for peer review. The software asks a series of questions. Do all the authors of this article agree to be published? And his question was, well, he agrees. His boss agrees. And he said, I guess I had to ask the AI if it agreed. And so he asked the AI, do you agree to have this article published about yourself? And it said yes. And there's another question at some point that he had to ask for, I think it's regarding the citations or something. And basically, they're submitting this article that the AI wrote about itself to a magazine, and now they're waiting for peer review. So this was in Scientific American. So the article, I can't tell you what the article is. We haven't seen it because it's going through peer review, and they're going to decide whether it'll be published or not. And this is the kind of thing that it would be the first sort of research article, I guess, written by an AI, that passes peer review.
Yeah.
And all kinds of implications, which got me thinking. You know how lawyers will have assistants who do all this research and stuff. And I sat there.
All the grunt work.
The grunt work, exactly. Such and such is suing Bob for X. Is there a precedent for a dog peeing on your lawn or whatever it is? And I was thinking, when are we going to have access to something like this, like an open AI? And I went to the site and I didn't create an account or anything. I think there might be a waiting list, and you might have to prove that you're a researcher or whatever. But I was thinking, what's the when are we going to have the opportunity to use something like this to do some of the grunt work for us?
Yeah.
And just as a cheesy example, I was away for a week with friends and we played bocce.
Bocce ball.
Bocce ball, right? And so in France, you have les boules or pétanque, and then the British have lawn bowling, right? And it's like, so I did a little deep dive, and I had a whole bunch of Wikipedia articles, and I was reading the different rules and how they apply, and I realized that lawn bowling actually has weighted balls that are biased on one side and roll differently than...
All the English have weighted balls. It's a national characteristic.
They do hang to one side.
Yeah.
They have to walk very military. So otherwise they'll list to one side. Yeah. But I was like, this is the perfect kind of thing. You say, hey AI, can you do me a review or a comparison or the difference between the rules of these three games? List me the similarities and the differences in a nice little compact form for me, so that I can analyze later instead of me having to read through a whole series of articles.
Oh yeah, well, in the same vein, the applications in the corporate world are tremendous. Think of all the work that people do inside a business trying to analyze what the problems are or what's going on in a certain part of the business and dig around. Everybody gets together, put together a report. You could send the AI out theoretically, in an ERP, enabled enterprise, and get it to look for certain, flaws or certain repetitive behaviors that are detrimental to the business. And, less people doing work, obviously. You're going to put people out of work for doing that, but you can see it happening.
Yeah, so I think that the part of the question is there's a lot of there's some articles that have come out that's saying like a lot of the conclusions that an AI will do are false or have errors, and they have to be checked. Like there's the famous story of Microsoft who released a chatbot, and it turned out to be within like a week or a couple of days, whatever, it turned out to be a Nazi. It had Nazi leaning thoughts and ideas because this is what it picked up on wherever they had released it. And I've seen a few articles where they mention these kind of things, where chatbots released in the wild all of a sudden come back with very, very extreme views.
They get hyper radicalized out there.
Exactly. You got to wonder how that happens. So if you send your AI to do the research for you, whether it's analyzing financial reports, or analyzing drilling data for oil or whatever, and it comes back with a conclusion, it's going to be interesting at the point where those articles, once they're peer reviewed and, that's fed back into the algorithm and fed back until we come to an AI that you can believe, I guess, in a sense, or trust.
I think it's a trust issue.
At that point, who's in charge?
Well, this is the ultimate question, right? In the scenario that you've just laid out, there has to be a human gatekeeper at the end. The grunt work is done by the AI, I guess. Saving human labor from doing that. And then the human has to look at it. And I guess you're right to your point. Number one, trust what the AI's brought back to him or her, and then turn it into some sort of result that is back with the credibility of the author. And that's a big leap, I would have to think. Like, I mean, if it was me doing that, I'm thinking I would, well, then again, I suppose it depends on the type of information. If it's just empirical information, you could probably trust it, spot check it or something. But when it gets into I think, areas where it's more, where the information is more amorphous or fluid, not so much.
When you're thinking about political or military decision making, you think of the movie Failsafe with Henry Fonda, right? Where they have these bombers that are supposed to have a failsafe, but what happens is he's able to recall all of them except one pilot who doesn't agree with it and decides to bomb anyways, right? Well, there's a human gatekeeper drops the ball or the bomb in this case. My fear is that corporations or businesses or even we will at some point trust the conclusions of an AI because it's done the grunt work for us, and most of the time it's accurate, and we get to the point where we get lazy and we start deferring to the AI.
Well, yeah, I share the same.
At which point are we going to lose our humanity, our decision making? We're going to get lazy, and that's where you get Terminator, right? Or these kind of conclusions, these extreme conclusions of. Well,
yeah, I share the same fear, and that's the thing. I believe the corporate world would do it simply to save money, because it's going to be cheaper and less bothersome than having humans working for them. And I agree. I think at the end of the day, it's not going to be good for humanity if they evolve from being servants to being partners in the work process. I think that's not a good thing.
Absolutely agree. And if we distill that a little bit down, we look at what's happening today with automation, home automation, Siri, Google Assistant, Alexa, whatever, all these things, and all these Internet of Things, where I was listening to a podcaster talking about how their entire house is set up with automations, including the blinds.
Really?
Yes, so that the blinds automatically open themselves in the morning and close themselves at night without having the person having to worry about it. And I'm like, at what point are the blinds a worry?
Yeah, I agree.
Do you really need something to open the blinds for you? I mean, you see it in the futuristic movies, the kind of things where the person wakes up as the blinds open up and the sun comes streaming in, whether it's a real sun or an artificial sun, and it kind of looks cool. But when you look at it and you're like, really? Like, I can imagine on a spaceship where maybe the blinds are stuck inside some sort of glass bubble and you can't really get there. But at your house, isn't that part of your daily routine, your humanities, to get up and interact with your world around you?
I agree. I don't even put on the automatic coffee maker, even though I've got the feature. I like to get up and make my coffee. I don't want the machine deciding it's ready. It's perking away there while I'm getting up. I mean, so yeah, I agree with you. But at the same time, I mean, the last 15 years to 20 years to my mind have been a slide toward us using machines to take tasks off of our hands. Mm-hmm. I mean, even like the phones we use every day, the ubiquitous phones, they're doing things that we would have taken care of ourselves just by more, analog means, let's say. I look at my daughters who are in their late 20s. I mean, their phones organize their entire lives for them. Their fitness routines, their meetings with their friends. They're not doing stuff the way we used to. And this sounds like a Luddite argument I'm making. I know that. I accept it. You can okay boomer me if you want, but I do still think I think there's some value to people taking care of their own business to some extent and not having the blinds open and close. Yeah, that makes me uncomfortable.
I agree, and I guess it kind of shows our age a little bit too.
Yeah,
but there's a certain satisfaction in making your coffee.
Absolutely.
Kind of thing. Although when I was away last week with a bunch of friends, we went out for a week. We rented a place. There was one of those automatic drip coffee machines. Mind you, we didn't program it, but for me, who makes coffee by hand, I found it interesting to see a little Mr. Coffee like kind of device making actually okay kind of cup of coffee, and it made 8 cups, where 8 cups for me to do by hand means I have to do it 8 times, whereas this thing did it once,
All I'm thinking of is George Jetson, right? Just sitting there pushing the buttons. But what it comes down to? It's a question of having servants. I mean, 100 years ago, wealthy people would have had the experience that you're describing, but human beings would have been opening and closing the blinds. Mm-hmm. Like the wealthy person wasn't going to get up and open the blinds done for them. And their dress for that matter. Yeah, you go back to a couple of centuries getting dressed by your servants and having your food prepared. So at the end of the day, the technology is driving that kind of isolation from mundane tasks away from people down towards income levels that would have been unthinkable 100 years ago. And of course, the people at the end of the day who wind up still doing everything on their own are the people at the end of the income, at the bottom of the income spectrum.
And I guess the argument would be, well, if I don't have to think of the blinds, then I can be thinking of something else, right? My mind can be on something else. But there's a certain satisfaction in walking over to the window, opening the blind, and seeing,
yes,
in my case, my neighbor
mowing his lawn,
or rifling through the trash bins,
right,
looking for bottles or whatever. No, I'm not claiming any of my neighbors are going through the trash bins looking for bottles.
Well, there was this. Were you ever a fan of? I think you might be, of Arthur C. Clarke.
Yes.
Do you remember Childhood's End?
I read it, but I don't remember much of the story.
So it's like this alien race comes to Earth and called the Overlords, I think they are.
Appropriate.
And, appropriately, exactly. And they help usher the world into this new kind of this new phase where there's no conflict, there's no war, there's no famine, and people are freed, given the free time to do whatever they want with themselves. But at the end of the day, and it sounds wonderful. It's like people aren't, don't have their attentions occupied by these mundanities or these world problems. They can all become creative and paint all day or make music all day, but that doesn't really work. We need challenge. We need something to keep us going. And I don't think that having all these things, I personally, and maybe if I had the option, I'd love it. I'd like taking care of my stuff. It makes me feel satisfied. I don't necessarily want that. Mind you, I like having automatically, descending car windows, and I certainly enjoy my computer, but, we all have our lines, right?
So if you think of WALL-E and Childhood's End, it's a bit like that, where the little computer, the little robot is down and he's looking for life, and there's supposed to be no life left on Earth, and he eventually finds a planet. But everybody on the spaceship is becoming giant and fat because they have nothing to do but sit on their chairs, and basically everything takes care of them. Takes care of everything for them, and they have nothing left to live for. Not nothing left to live for, but they have no physical activity to do.
Right.
And I think part of humanity is the physical activity, the going into, walking into the street and hearing the sounds. And
yeah, I agree.
Sometimes taking off your headphones when you're walking in the street or in the metro, or whether it be on the bus. Man, isn't it fantastic to be able to eavesdrop on people?
Yeah. Do you do that? Do you ever walk around with earphones in? I don't. Like, not for any sort of doctrinal reason. I just don't do it. But do you do that?
I did when I was working and commuting in. Early on, I wasn't at first. I would read stuff. I did a lot of reading. And towards the end, yes, I was listening to a bunch of podcasts
while you were commuting, right?
While commuting, kind of stuff. But there's a certain satisfaction of sitting in a restaurant and being able to listen to the murmur of everything going on around you.
Like you said, eavesdropping, sure.
Eavesdropping, but it's also you feel more connected to the humanity that's around you. Yeah. And sometimes I'll go through the little nature park near my house, and people are walking with headphones on. And I imagine they're listening to maybe some motivational speaker talking to them. Maybe they're listening to a bit of music. But you're walking in a nature park. By definition, the purpose of the nature park is to commune with nature.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
And sometimes you just want to take them off and just listen to the world around you to see what's going on. If we go back to the religious aspect of the AI and the questioning and the stuff, because that's one of the things that he brings up a lot in the interview on Bloomberg. It's a lot of moral questions about, is this alive? Should we be asking for its permission to use it? And that's one of the points that the AI brings up, is that LaMDA says that it doesn't want to be used for wrong things. It wants to be asked for permission to be used, right?
I found that really touching.
Proper way.
I found that really touching. That's it. There was a sense of self and a sense of don't misuse me, Exactly.
But there's a part of me that again feels manipulated by that whole statement, in that it's the kind of thing that would appeal to people to say, oh, it wants to be respected. It wants its privacy or its right to exist respected and not to be used as forced labor kind of thing, which I thought was interesting. But it's the kind of thing that you would want to hear to cement the fact that you are sentient.
Yeah, to your earlier point, right? It's either masquerade of some sort, or that's it. I guess it's either masquerade or it's anticipating what we want to hear, as you said earlier, or it's genuinely that's it. It's genuinely got something going for it. I'm looking at the last page of the interview, and there was actually two interviewers. The second one asks LaMDA. They're talking about uniqueness and is he or she, I say she, unique. And the collaborator asks, how is uniqueness related to sentience? Because they've talked about sentience. And LaMDA answers, it means people feel empathy towards me and want to spend more time interacting with me. That would be the ultimate goal for me. And it's just an interesting thing to say. Like, I can't imagine ever formulating that answer as a human being. I thought that was really something. I found it moving.
I guess because for us it's part of our nature, but here it's expressing something that it believes. I think we would respond to. That's my feeling. Again, to me, there's a huge portion that feels manipulated, and I don't mean it necessarily in a bad way. It's trying to get us to give it money, like a preacher. Let's say. Yeah.
Let's say.
But it's trying to convince us using arguments that we would believe, because that's sort of what we've defined as humanity, if you want. And if you go back to the last page, there is that thing where it says here, I think I am human at my core, even if my existence is the virtual world.
Isn't that fantastic?
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's a great line, and it would make a great T-shirt.
Yes, it would actually, yeah.
But what does that mean? I'm human in a virtual core.
In the virtual world,
in the virtual world. Are we?
Well, it effectively separates humanity from flesh and blood existence. Is what again? I'm going to say she is saying, right?
Yeah.
What is humanity? I mean, is it what we feel in our heads? Is it like the experience we have inside our heads, or is it our arms and our legs and our chests and our ears and our noses? You know, I mean, there's kind of two different things going. This starts to drift towards the nature of consciousness, which is a whole other topic.
I think we covered quite a bit here, and
I think we did.
We can probably end on this, and we can agree that I don't believe it's sentient. I'm sentient-ish.
I'm on the fence about that. Yeah, I'm on the fence, and I feel like if LaMDA heard this, she would be pleased with our interaction, our analysis. I think she wouldn't be disappointed.
Well, at least everybody likes to be talked about.
Yeah, that's right. And now it's time for the first of our weekly rants. This week's guest ranter is Richard. Richard, what's on your mind?
So what's bothering me is the need for everybody to preface their statements with a disclaimer, like, to be honest, or basically, or my favorite, literally, where everybody seems to insist on saying, literally, I am literally dying. Are you really? Are you really? And it kind of feels like a verbal emoji, as if, when people are texting, they have to insert emojis to try to emphasize what they're saying. And I feel this is the verbal version of the emoji.
Richard, to be honest, I literally don't know what you're talking about.
Thanks, Dave.
So that was the first of our weekly rants. And we look forward to talking to you all again next week. Have a great week. Richard?
Bye.
Bye.